Welcome to Naras, where we discuss all things Latin and writing and books.
I'm Rachel Cunning, and I live on a mountain with two cats.
I am Arianne Belzer-Carroll, and I don't live on a mountain, but I am in a different room than I'm usually in because my internet is choppy today. And you can see that my entire kitchen is pretty much in here with me.
That's exciting.
Not
so
really.
we haven't talked about what we're reading in a while, and there's no segue from like my entire kitchen is in the room with me to like, what are you reading?
There are books in here.
Oh, good. What are you reading?
I mean, they're cookbooks. But I just finished reading a book called Innocence. And I talked in an earlier episode of a book called Flirt, and the same woman, Kathleen Tesaro, wrote this one. I don't like this one as much. I found the dialogue fun. The dialogue was super believable. But there kept being these huge and interesting thematic plot points that got resolved sort of with a sentence, but there was no depth to the sentence. And so we find out, oh, you didn't really want to go to Juilliard all along. But we don't find out why she didn't tell anybody that, and we didn't find out about none of it. And it made me really examine my own writing with a closer eye and ask myself whether when I resolve big problems, am I giving people enough resolution? Because this drove me nuts, because the dialogue made me love them, you know? I knew them as people, but the plot just didn't satisfy. What are you reading?
Well, nothing with much dialogue. It's called Don't Believe a Word, and it's about language and how language changes and evolves. And there's a really great chapter on etymology that I got really nerdy about, and I was like, yeah, this is so cool. And then there are some slightly harder linguistic chapters, but I really liked this chapter about how language is devolving, because it's not. And so I enjoyed that. And it still has some conversational moments that are pretty entertaining, because I love being able to read nonfiction that has the feel like I'm having a conversation with the author. And even when it gets a little technical, I feel like that. So yeah, so I'm enjoying it. I'm in the middle of it. I don't know where it's going, except I'm not supposed to believe a word of it.
I will be interested in hearing what you get out of not having believed anything you read. I like that both of us brought up dialogue, because that's what we're talking about today, is dialogue and its usages and natural conversation. And I just had a conversation with somebody in a National Novel Writing Month National Novel Writing Month Latin.
Not that we're recording these in summer, and
yes,
sure, I didn't let everybody ever do
you're
that.
seeing this after National Latin Novel Writing Month is over, but this was in July when we did this. And so there was a meeting this past Monday, and we were talking about, is dialogue better than narration? And it's not. They both have their place. Narration is important, but dialogue is what causes life. You know, we learn a lot about characters based on how they talk to each other. We get to know them. It's way more interesting to hear about a person's life than it is to be told Rome has 7 hills. So, if we learn that Rome has 7 hills because somebody's living that, that's way more interesting. And dialogue is flat without, this is going to be a stupid sentence. Some pizzazz. Right. And our pizzazz is things like, oh my God. And good heavens, sir. This is, I don't know.
And then also just like laughter, or being like, right? Like, someone says something unbelievable and someone goes, right? Like, can you believe it? So there are all these things that we use in natural conversation. And writing dialogue, we're not going into how to write a good dialogue today, but what we are going to go into, our story today is going to be how you can pull out a couple of words or phrases to really add some of that eye-popping pizzazz to make your dialogue feel a little more lifelike. And my cat is sitting right here and I'm petting his head. So if you see my hand doing anything weird, we'll have a cat cameo. Hello.
So, okay. And I think you're right about the word, bye cat. I think you're right about the word lifelike. If you don't include those things that sound like things you might actually say, people don't believe the characters, and then they don't want to listen to the characters. And every language has its own sense of what's idiomatic in response. So you gave a really great example of right or really. Hebrew doesn't do that. For example, if you told me in Hebrew that you have 17 brothers, in English, I would say, really? And in Hebrew, my response would be, "Ein davar kazeh." That's not a thing. It is a thing, but that's not the response. That's not a thing. English doesn't say that. Hebrew does. Latin doesn't say really. It says ein. Do you say that? And so today, we're going to, yeah. Today we're going to talk about some specifically Latin idiomatic natural
pauses, joyful exclamations,
right.
exclamations of whoa. In fact, let's start with why Mihi? Because I really want to end on a positive note.
Yes, let's start with the whoa. Why Mihi is a great place to start. It means woe unto me. No one says that anymore. So a better.
I say it all the time.
Okay, well, Rachel says it. The rest of us don't. So the rest of us might be like, yeah. That's why. This is not a scene that I wrote, but there's a wonderful moment in what I think was a dialogue written by, I think it was Sebaldus Hayden. And they're public domain. You can find them pretty easily. If I'm remembering correctly, there's a teacher who gets mad at his students and is planning on whooping them one, which I don't recommend trying at home or school. And one of the kids' responses is, "Why nostris natibus?" I'm like, oh no, our tushies, not that. Woe unto our backsides. I've never had occasion to say it. I'm always on the lookout for a reason to say that. But it's a really beautiful, I think, illustration of both how mild why can be, and also up to like how incredibly intense it can be. I'm going to be beaten, and also, no, my tush.
I've used why Mihi in a couple places. So I used it in Ridicuли et Horribiles Dei Dei, which is super long title. But I used it when Saturnus has drunk the potion that is going to cause him to vomit up all of his children. And so there's dialogue and other things that are happening in between it. And I really needed something that he could exclaim right before he threw up a kid, which is unpleasant. So he exclaims, why Mihi Stomaco before each time he throws up a kiddo. So that was my why. I've also, yes, it does. And I also used it with the Mostellaria because why Mihi is all over comedy. And so I chose that as a phrase to include there as well.
And it is
another one.
I was gonna say it's always a negative expression. It's always, oh God, something's happening to me. Oh dear, oh no, this is terrible. They're right. This is never like, what? It's always like,
yeah, it's not like, whoa, dude. It's like, whoa is me.
It's always a sound of upset.
Yeah.
And not all of these are that we're going to talk about. So
sorry, and I was just going to say my favorite one I actually learned from reading one of your novellas, and I use it like all the time now, is wah. I love wah. Please talk about wah.
I can't even get it out of my English vocabulary because I don't have a good correlative for it in English. It's so useful. I tend more towards wah than towards why, because they're not synonymous. Wah is one of those that can actually be used both positively and negatively, where why cannot. Why is always sad, but sometimes they do get treated as synonyms, and in some ways why is stronger. Wah is a sort of general, you're feeling joyful, wah. You're feeling surprised, wah. You're feeling angry, wah. It's really versatile. It's super easy to trap it in your unconscious vocabulary. Terence has this great line, wah consilium calidum, which I also need to make a point out of saying, so stay tuned. But there's a scene in
Lucia. Use it in your next Lucia novella.
There you go. Wah consilium calidum. She never has good plans. That's not true. She often has good plans. She never
no, it's going to be great.
It's great plans. But there's a scene in the novella that I've finished about Hannibal, where Hannibal gets shot in the thigh with an arrow, right? And his right-hand man, Mago, says, I'm going to carry you to the camp. And Hannibal's like, what do you mean I'll go to the camp when I die? You're not going to carry me to the camp. And then Mago points out that of the two of them, Mago is the one who can walk, so have fun stopping me. And Hannibal goes into this with a wah, like, fine, whatever, noise of annoyance and resignation, in contrast to Terrence's, yo, your plan, bruh. And I very rarely use it positively, but I should start because it does actually carry that connotation. You have a favorite one that I've started using recently because of you, which is I
really got into writing it when I was writing stories for my kids in school, because I was writing all of these short stories about the Roman gods, and I had this one that's a very TPR-esque kind of story, which we had a lot of fun with, where Apollo's trying to kill the Python, and the Python's like, no, and it's running around to all of these different places, and in each place, a different group of people scream, aye, and run away, because there's a giant snake, and, Apollo's chasing them, and I had a lot of fun when I read it out loud. Some of my kids got really into it, so there were definitely some shoutings of IE, and I always wonder, never asked, what the German teacher next door thinks about all the weird shouting that I do. IE is one of my favorites.
Right, and it's not always a sound of terror. It can also be a sound of surprise or frustration. My National Latin novel writing Latin month.
You can name it because you're going to publish it.
Yeah, I'm still meditating on its name, so I'm not there yet, but stay tuned.
Fair.
It has a nickname, just doesn't have a name yet. Is full of a character who yells "Aye!" all the time. Sometimes because of surprise, sometimes because of frustration, sometimes not being able to express what they want to say. Sometimes, did I say excitement? Excitement.
I think so.
Okay, well, a lot of excitement. And it seems to carry all of those connotations. Heu is another fun one to shout together and teach with your kids. And it is mostly a sound of sadness and despair. Flautus has a lovely "Hey, my miser," that my kids get a huge kick out of because it's so dramatic. But it can.
Which is stronger, why or hey?
Why?
Okay.
Why? Hey was like.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah. But it can lend a sense of drama. It doesn't feel like any one of us would go around saying, "Oh," but we do. We just do it idiomatically in English. We go,
right.
Anyway, can we be happy or pause?
Well, how about we pause first?
We'll pause.
Can we pause before we're
happy?
Happy.
We'll be hedges.
Fine. Right. So I love hedging because it can develop super strong characterization and intensity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of ways that we hedge. I'm going to have trouble saying the word hedge. Which is Latin for shh, and is way more effective because shh takes forever to say and also is loud, whereas is not. And then we have m or hem, which actually isn't a sound of uncertainty like so much as like indignation or surprise or like, hey, what are you doing, dude? Or it's not like an so the way that we do in English. So right. Yeah, so you're going to talk about in a second. So I've got an example in the National Novel Writing Latin Month novel Latin, in which I'm going to get there before next year, in which the main character McGillis and his wife Demonassa are talking about her friends. He's asking if she knows that her friends are Hetairae, which she does, and says, didn't you know that? And McGillis is a little taken aback and responds to her with a which might be surprised for him. It might be sort of a pausing, like, or it might be like what my mother does when I say to her, I think I'll make cookies at midnight. And she goes,
That's awesome. in several of my novellas. And I
And
just
my
want to
13th.
share yeah, the one that like breaks my heart the most because it's so powerful, because it can be really powerful. So in Pegasus and Bellerophon, Pegasus just really, really wants a friend, and he's trying so hard to talk this dude who is not his friend out of a really bad idea. And Pegasus has been increasingly realizing that this dude is not his friend. And dude, Bellerophon, silences him with a shut up. I don't know why you can talk.
And he doesn't
Other
even
things
bother
don't
with
talk.
his words. Like, he doesn't even say shut up. He just goes like, "St."
Yeah. So, and this emotional effect here can be really powerful.
Yeah.
And in this novella, I only used once, but it was worth it. And it's important to kind of bring these kinds of things in because it's a moment of emotional intensity. It's a moment of characterization that's really strong too. And so you can use these kinds of words to make it pop. And pizzazz doesn't always have to be happy.
That's true. And they lend themselves to characterization and communication in a way that we don't typically consider with regard to like fillers and rejoinders. There's so much that's communicated in human interaction just through noise and pause and exclamation that doesn't carry a lot of information in it, you know? Like who doesn't carry a lot of information, neither does wah. But they're so expressive of how you're feeling, and it makes us real, you know? You better believe I know exactly what my mother thinks when she goes, shouldn't say anything else. That's it. But after the devastation of my mother's, let's find a reason to be positively characterized and surprised for a moment.
I want to do that. Let's do that. Yuge Bambox. Bye-bye. Berkeley.
Makti virtute.
I am not gonna lie, I know that phrase because of a satire that I read where it is used quite ironically in an inappropriate place that we are not gonna get into.
I don't know about that one, so we'll talk after.
But you use this in a really fun way. My cat is being disruptive with your kids. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's like, woo, go. We don't in Latin say e, because that's like, which isn't like super encouraging. Lewis in Short sort of hilariously says, go on in your excellence. So it's really important to me to encourage kids to constantly encourage each other. It's really easy to foster competition. It's harder to foster, yeah, man. So when they do things in class that involve feats of strength, like crab walking or balancing Oreos on their faces, I teach them and encourage them to shout "Makte" or "Makte virtute" at each other. So at football games where the Rams, I hear a whole lot of "Makte Ariates." Of course, that also means that when the school does something they perceive as stupid, I hear a whole lot of "Makte Ariates." That's fine. So this is useful in your classrooms for encouragement and congratulation, and it's useful in your writing for the same reason, because presumably at some point you're going to have friendships or you're going to have success, and people like to say, "Good job, dude," and that's how you do that.
Yes.
You use Mirabile Wisu, right? Like you really like the.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used Mirabile Wisu, I've used Mirabile Auditu. Those are usually the things that I like, but that is probably because I tend to like poetry more than prose anyway. So when I think of exclamations, I think of Mirabile Wisu. So I've certainly used that one a lot.
I think those are beautiful.
What kind of things? Yeah, and it's so much fun. Like, and they don't know that they're reading something weird called a supine. Like, it's great. But I know you have used more exclamations than I have. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Babai, the first one that I teach, Babae, also tatai and papai, which I don't teach as much. But when I teach kids to story listen,
I wonder why.
So I always tell them that everything I'm going to tell them is fascinating, but some things are obviously more fascinating than others. So we come up with all kinds of ways to express that fascination. And it means that they are real responsive real quickly, because they want to say whoa or dude. So when we give them that facility very quickly, that's the first thing that they latch onto. Kids really want to express. Bye-bye and Herkle are the first ones they learn. Bye-bye shows up in the example below. In the book that I am writing about Dido, they're hosting a feast. Dido's younger sister Anna sees the elaborate setup. She's 6. She's appropriately awed. And she goes, bye-bye, like you do when you're 6, and everything's cool. Herkle works as an expression of shock, kind of like a by God, like by Jove, I think she's got it, kind of Eliza Doolittle, whatever. It's a really useful emphatic. They always translate it as by Hercules, and so it feels useless, but we say like, oh my God, all the time.
Or gosh darn it.
Or gosh darn it, shark. Yeah, Herkle. It's an expression of like shock and surprise. I also use euge. Do you use euge?
I don't really, but I really like it because I learned it at my first Aristocatio. Like I heard people go, yoga, and I'm like, cool, all right. So that's where I learned it. And so I kind of like it as a hooray. It has some nostalgic memories.
I don't use Bombox. You do. And it's stellar.
I do.
Tell us about it.
Well, my company that I have is called Bombox Press, and I chose it because it can mean like amazing, wow, marvelous, splendid, how cool. So I kind of like it for that reason. I finally got it into my first novella because it hasn't ever really fit before.
Yeah.
And it's the exclamation of surprise when people find out that Pegasus can talk, or that Pegasus finds out he's talking to a goddess. So I feel like both of those are appropriate responses when you find out that,
yeah,
whoa, dude, this thing can talk. I thought it was just like an animal, but like it's sentient. So I was really excited that I got it in there. We also have our kids yell Bombox when we are doing some rereading activities. So we'll set a timer, I'll make a weird noise, and then the first person who yells Bombox doesn't have to do an activity. So it's really fun.
So to summarize, that was a whole lot of information. And we'll put them on a slide at the end for you so you have a visual for that again in a summary. But it's been my experience, and it's anecdotal, but it's been my experience that the more that we provide for new Latin speakers and older Latin speakers, an ability to be immediately facile with things that are second nature to them, like exclamation and expressing their feelings, the faster being able to actually express yourself comes. It begins to feel more natural. It's also super useful for comprehension because it clues us into emotion, it clues us into tone, and it makes the people in the book feel really real and relatable. And all of those things are super important for writing specifically. Exclamation is good in language in general. This is important for writing specifically, because the more a kid can empathize with what they're reading, the better they understand it, and the more they want to participate in it, the more real your story is going to feel. And it's such a cheap way to do it, you know? It's such a cheap way. Yeah, with such a huge payoff. So here's a why nobis, although not natibus, because it is time to wrap up. We hope that we hope that sharing some of these exclamations and conversational sort of interactions and examples of where we use them will help you with your own writing. Rachel, what are we doing next time?
Next time, I believe we are adding depth to a scene through the revision process.
Until then, scribite et exclamate bonis avibus.
And facete valiatus. Okay. You could always go down and kill all the thistle in the ditch. All right, I'm getting things back up.
Purple dresses.
There's a little bit of romance, but mostly it's just like depression.
Yeah, it could be set in the 30s. Sure, like the Dust Bowl,
Yeah.
Thistle in a Ditch. The next time
Yeah.
that you and I decide to write a semi-historical romance in the 1930s that's mostly made of dust, we're calling it Thistle in the Ditch.
Since you're recording, we can put that as the.
Do you want me to put it as the bloopers at the end?
Like, please.